Hello everyone, thank you for coming back to my channel. Today, we continue following the story of LyTuDiep and CEO James, two people who are facing one of the most intense turning points they've ever experienced. In the previous episode, you already saw what happened. CEO Hung, James's close brother-like friend, traveled to Cambodia for a business trip and suddenly lost all contact. No messages. No calls. No traces left behind. The first questions began to surface. Did something happen to him? Is this no longer just a normal loss of contact, but possibly something connected to a kidnapping? While Diep tries her best to stay calm, James is on the brink of losing control. He immediately seeks help from Officer Lee. With his experience in international investigations, Lee agrees to take the case and begins tracing every possible lead, no matter how small or uncertain. But the deeper they dig, the darker everything becomes, leaving James and Diep with only one burning question. What really happened to CEO Hung? And will James and Diep be able to save him in time? Make sure to watch the entire video to see what unfolds next. Early the next morning, when the world was still dim as if wrapped in mist, James stepped out of his bedroom. His hair was messy from a sleepless night. He walked down to the kitchen, hoping a glass of water would steady his mind. But the moment his fingers touched the cup, ring, ring, ring. The phone shrieked through the silence, slicing the air like a punch straight to the chest. James jolted, his heart leaping painfully. He looked down at the screen. Lee. Just that name was enough to tense every muscle in his body. He answered. Before he could even breathe, Lee's voice hit his ear fast, urgent, stretched tight like a string about to snap. James. Cambodia just responded. Around the area where Hung was staying, there was a raid on a fraud crime ring 3 days ago. In that instant, James's whole world froze. The glass slipped from his hand and tapped against the counter. A chill raced down his spine, raising every hair on his body. His heart felt squeezed, stuck in his throat. He couldn't speak. Not a single word. Sensing the heavy silence, Lee inhaled slowly, then continued, his voice lower, heavier. They're sending over the list of people who were rescued, and those who went missing. James, we need to prepare ourselves. James gripped the edge of the counter so hard his knuckles turned white. The house was so quiet he could hear his own shaky breathing. He knew Lee never exaggerated. And when Lee used the words, prepare ourselves, it meant things were truly serious. It took a long moment before James could force out a voice from deep in his chest, each word strained. Is there any lead on Hung yet? There was a half-second pause on the other end, but to James, it felt like a full minute. Nothing clear yet, Lee replied. But they've started reviewing dashcam footage, tracking the group's movements, and checking the lists of those who were detained. We'll definitely have more data today. James collapsed into the chair beside the table, still gripping the phone as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. He closed his eyes, trying to find even a sliver of light in the storm of emotions swirling inside him. One call. Just a few lines of information. But it was enough to throw his entire mind into a raging storm with no exit. And all he could do now was wait. James returned home looking like a man whose soul had just slipped out of his body. The moment the door opened and his heavy footsteps echoed through the room, Diep, who was folding clothes in the living room, snapped her head up instantly. Just one glance. James's eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, his face pale, as if he had just walked out of a hospital, his lips trembling slightly. Diep didn't need to ask. She could feel it immediately. Something was very, very wrong. James, she stood up so fast the chair nearly shifted. You got news about Hung, didn't you? For the first time, James didn't have the strength to hide anything. He couldn't pretend to be strong in front of her anymore. He stayed silent for a few seconds, then exhaled a long, exhausted breath, like releasing the last lock holding him together. Then he told her everything. Lee's phone call, the raid, the list of people rescued and the ones missing, the dashcam footage under review. Every sentence he spoke felt like another blade slicing through the already heavy air. As Diep listened, the color drained from her face bit by bit. By the time James finished, she nearly collapsed onto the sofa, her hands gripping each other so tightly her knuckles turned white. If Hung really fell into that criminal ring, her voice cracked, then it's extremely dangerous, James. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the entire room. Silence swallowed everything, so thick they could hear the ticking of the clock 1 second at a time. James stepped forward, gently placed a hand on her shoulder, then pulled her into his arms. His voice was low but firm. It's okay. Lee and I will track this down. No matter how hard it gets. I'm not giving up. He paused for a brief moment, then said slowly, as if giving the most important instruction of all. But you must not tell Tuca. If she finds out right now, I'm afraid she won't be able to handle it. Diep looked up at him, her eyes already rimmed red, lashes wet, but she tried to steady herself. She nodded firmly, like convincing both him and herself. I understand. I won't say anything, not until there's confirmed news. The two of them stared at each other, saying nothing more. Every emotion was stuck in their chests, so heavy it became hard to breathe. James and Diep hadn't even recovered from their suffocating conversation when the sharp, dragging screech of a motorcycle brake tore through the quiet outside. The sound ripped the heavy silence of the house apart, making both of them jolt, eyes widening in alarm. Before the door could fully open, a figure burst in like a whirlwind. Tuca. She staggered at the doorway, her appearance so drained and disoriented that just looking at her made the chest tighten. Her curly hair was a mess from the night wind, a few strands sticking to her temples with sweat. Her eyes were swollen, bloodshot from nights without sleep. Her face pale, like someone who had run for miles on pure panic alone. James. Diep. Her voice was hoarse, shaking, as if it could break at any moment. Do you two have any news about Hung? These past days. I kept calling, no one answered. I'm scared. I'm really scared. The words hit the room like a blade twisting through already suffocating air. James and Diep glanced at each other, just for 1 second, then both looked down, turning their faces away from her. And that tiny moment of avoidance was enough for Tuca to freeze. She covered her mouth with her hand as if to hold back a sob, her shoulders trembling. Her eyes widened in terror, the kind that appears only when a person sees the exact nightmare they've been dreading. You too. Her voice cracked, torn straight from her throat. You're hiding something from me, aren't you? James rushed forward, holding her trembling arm and guiding her to sit down. He bowed his head, closed his eyes for 1 second, gathering the last bit of control he had left, then spoke through a tight breath. Tuca. Cambodia reported there was a raid. Right in the area where Hung was staying. The sentence fell like a thunderclap. Tuca's body stiffened, her eyes widening, her breath breaking apart. Why you mean? He might have been there. Diep slid closer beside her, taking Tuca's ice-cold hand in hers. Their shaking fingers touched as if both were clinging to the same fragile hope. We're not certain. Diep's voice was slow, trembling. But they're reviewing all the cameras, trying to see who was taken during the raid. James pulled a chair in front of them, leaning forward, hands on his knees, voice tight through clenched teeth. They're also sending over the list of those rescued and those missing. Lee already requested special support to track down any trace of Hung. We're not giving up, Tuca. Not for a second. Hearing that, Tuca finally broke. She cried, not loud, not chaotic, but the kind of cry that comes from deep pain, the kind that feels like it's crushing the lungs. Her shoulders shook violently, her face buried in her hands. I felt something was wrong days ago. Her voice fractured completely. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Diep wrapped her arms around her instantly, pulling her close, holding her like someone trying to stop another person from falling off a cliff. You just gave birth. Your body is still weak. I was afraid you couldn't handle the shock. But now that you know, we'll all look for Hung together. I promise. You're not alone. And we won't leave Hung alone either. Tuca collapsed deeper into Diep's shoulder, crying without sound. Inside the small house, the air grew so heavy that no one dared speak another word. Only the faint, choking sobs of Tuca filled the thick silence. The air in the room felt as thick as night fog that hadn't lifted. Tuca's choked sobs had barely quieted when the three of them sank back into a silence so heavy it felt impossible to breathe. No one dared look at each other. No one knew what to say next. Then suddenly, James's phone vibrated sharply against the wooden table, rattling out short, metallic bursts that echoed like steel scraping against glass. In this moment, that sound was no different from a bomb detonating in the middle of the room. All three flinched. Tuca grabbed Diep's wrist, her breath catching as if she might faint. James slowly reached out and lifted the phone. The screen lit up, and that glow reflected the raw, bloodshot fear in his eyes. The sender's name appeared. Lee. The moment James saw that name, every muscle in his body tightened tenfold. He swallowed hard, his palms instantly cold, as if submerged in ice water. Even Diep and Tuca stared at the phone, their eyes a shaken mixture of hope, fear, and desperation. James opened the message. A few short lines appeared brief, minimal, but carrying a weight that felt like ice sinking into bone. James, a camera near the border market, recorded someone who looks a lot like Hung being forced into a black vehicle. Not 100% confirmed yet. Sending an image for comparison. Just reading it sent a freezing jolt down James's spine. His whole body felt weak, a faint wave of dizziness sliding through his head. His hand trembled as he tapped on the attached photo. The screen flickered once, then the image appeared, blurred, grainy, overly zoomed, poorly lit. But still clear enough to reveal a tall silhouette, a familiar outline all three of them had known for years. That posture, the angle of those shoulders, even the helplessness in the way the figure was being pushed forward. Diep covered her mouth, tears instantly pooling in her eyes. As for Tuca, it was as if every drop of strength drained out of her in a single heartbeat. Her eyes widened, then she suddenly broke into a wail, a raw, ripping sound. That's Hung. I know him. That shoulder, that stance. I could never mistake it. Her trembling hand reached toward the phone, her fingertips brushing the screen gently, as if afraid the image would vanish like a dream. James quickly wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her steady. It's okay, Tuca. The fact that there's camera footage means we finally have a lead. Lee's tracking everything minute by minute over there. Once they send more confirmation, we'll know exactly what happened. Diep grabbed Tuca's cold hand, squeezing tightly. As long as Hung appears on camera, it means he still has a chance. We haven't lost anything yet, do you understand? Her words were both reassurance and a desperate attempt to steady herself, to stop her own fear from consuming her. A sudden draft slipped through the door crack, lifting the curtain slightly before it fell back down in slow motion. The sound of the wind was faint, but in that moment it made all three shiver. No one said it aloud, but they all knew. What awaited them ahead wasn't just a search. It was the slow, cold unveiling of a dark truth. A shadow waiting behind a door, ready to reveal itself the closer they stepped. Inside the small room, It felt as if time itself had tightened around them, squeezing every breath. Even the ticking of the clock sounded heavy, like the echo of each person's heartbeat. The three of them sat close together, yet each was battling their own fear, a quiet, gnawing kind of fear that suffocated more than any loud panic ever could. In James's hand, the phone screen was still glowing, displaying the blurry, over-zoomed image. Just a silhouette, dim lighting, a bad angle. And yet all three of them felt the same eerie certainty. It could be Hung. And that possibility was something they could not afford to ignore. Tuca stared at the image, her eyes blurred with tears, as if she wanted to carve every detail of it into her memory. Diep sat beside her, silently gripping her hand, gripping so tightly that both of their hands trembled, like they were sharing the last bit of strength they had. James stood up and took a long breath. The uncertainty that had clouded his eyes earlier had vanished, replaced by something sharp, steady, and resolute. He looked at the two women before him. One was the woman he loved, the other was a wife terrified of losing her husband, and he understood exactly how heavy his responsibility was. "We will find Hung." It wasn't encouragement. It wasn't an empty promise. It was a vow weighted with loyalty, duty, and the bond they had all built over the years. Whatever lay ahead, however cruel or dark the truth might be, all three of them knew one thing: they could not step back. When someone you love disappears in a foreign land, the only thing left to hold on to is faith. And as long as there was even a single clue, even a blurred figure on a distant camera, they would cling to it with everything they had. A cold draft swept through the window, carrying a chill that felt like a warning, a reminder that the road ahead would be long, harsh, and far more dangerous than they expected. But the three of them, hearts aching yet unbroken, remained there, united, focused on the same direction, the same mission. Hung must come home, no matter the cost. Will that image truly turn out to be Hung? Will the investigators in Cambodia uncover a strong enough lead to break through the mystery? And will James, Diep, Tuca manage to find him before it becomes too late? Stay tuned for the next episode to discover the latest developments. Don't forget to leave a comment to pray for Hung's safety and send strength for this difficult journey ahead.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến mọi người video tiếp theo. Ôi trời ơi, mắc cười quá. Mình vừa mới edit xong một video nên là mình hơi mỏi một tí, mình sẽ thư giãn một tí. Hôm nay thì mình đưa đến video tiếp theo về câu chuyện của Lý Tử Diệp và COC. Tạm biệt mọi người.